Marvellous, thank you. So, hello, my name is Anne Corp, and on behalf of the Open SDG team and our partner organisations here today, I'd like to welcome you all to the very first Open SDG webinar. So, I've been leading development of the UK SDG platform for more than 3 years. So, I've been along the whole journey from the UK first reusing the original US platform to us collaborating on a joint US-UK platform, and in recent times, the creation and development of Open SDG through our partnership with the Centre for Open Data Enterprise. So I'd like to share with you now a slide, please, Lucy, that shows the countries, regions and cities due to be represented by you all here today. So it is really great to see that an open source SDG platform, which was first developed in Philadelphia in the US, is now reused globally, and that the Open SDG community is continuing to grow. If you haven't already done so, please do introduce yourself to others in the Open SDG community by adding your name and organisation in the chat. And so to the agenda for today, and to share some information on etiquette and how to ask questions. Firstly, please keep your microphones on mute and your video turned off throughout the presentations. As shown on your screens right now, to access the Slido, please use the QR code or go to the Slido webpage and enter the event number 98471. The Slido will be open throughout the webinar. So to enter a question for the Q&A session, please go to the Q&A tab. To add a suggestion for what you'd like us to cover at future webinars, please go to the Ideas tab. You can either enter a new question or idea on these tabs, or show your support for something already posted by clicking on the thumbs up icon. We'll ask the questions with the most votes first, but if we don't get time to answer everything during the webinar, then we will make sure we share answers afterwards. Thank you to those of you who sent us questions before the webinar. We've already added summarised versions of these questions onto the Slido Q&A tab. Thirdly, if you would like to comment on a presentation or clarify something, could you please use the chat function? We're really pleased to have several members of the UN Statistics Division with us here today. The Open SDG team have worked very closely with them through our involvement in supporting countries in the DFID-funded project on SDG monitoring. So Rebecca from UN Statistics Division will be moderating the chat function for us today. Thank you, Rebecca. So finally, just to let you know that we will be recording this webinar and we will be sharing it via the Open SDG website, as we think it will be a valuable resource for other organisations using Open SDG. So now to our first presentation. I'd like to hand you over to Brock Fanning, data scientist at the Centre for Open Data Enterprise. Brock is one of the lead developers for Open SDG and is going to talk you through some of the latest developments.
Thanks, Anne. Let me share my screen. All right. So, hi everyone, my name is Brock Fanning. I'm a contributor to the Open SDG project, and I'd like to talk about version 1. Version 1.0.0 is our latest release. This came out about 2 weeks ago, and I'd like to go over just a quick overview of what's in it. We've added a number of improvements through user feedback, through usability testing, and also from an expert review by a user researcher. And so I'd like to go over the new features that we added, also to highlight some of the simplified design, and to talk a bit about the improved developer experience. So first off, let's go over the new features. We've got a front page intro banner now. This is an optional feature, and it's configurable as well. This is a banner, some description, and also an image designed to give users a better introduction to the platform. And what you're seeing there on the screen is what shows out the box, but all of that text and imagery is customizable. We've also added a bulk data download. This is just a simple button that shows up on the home page, and it will download a zip file which contains all of the data, all the CSV files. We've also added a new feature to the reporting status page. Most of you are probably aware of the reporting status page, which OpenSDG has, which normally shows a breakdown by the goal. So it shows goal 1, goal 2, goal 3, etc. And one of the requested features was the ability to do a breakdown by something other than the goal. So what you're seeing here is an example of that. It can be any field that's in your metadata. This example here is showing by UN custodian agency, but it's easy to add additional tabs there. And it's optional. You don't have to. If you choose not to show additional tabs, then it looks the same as it always has. We've also improved the site search. Search now includes all pages on the site, and also it shows the more relevant search results at the top. And what I mean by all the pages is previously in OpenSDG, the search only showed indicators, and the things that were omitted were other pages on the site and also goal pages. So now the site search includes all of that stuff. So you can search for indicators as well as other pages and goals. And the relevancy, so the sorting of the search results now is more sophisticated, and it shows the more relevant results at the top. And this is highly configurable. So if you're not seeing the results at the top that you're expecting to see, it can be configured. There's an option where you can boost certain fields in the content so that the results show higher. We've also added a new type of data visualization. This is the first example. We've refactored our code so that it's easier to add new data visualizations and also to alter the data visualizations. So this is the first example of a new one. This is stacked bar charts, and it depends on a certain disaggregation in your data. So in this example, it's showing a disaggregation of female and male, and rather than showing the two bars separately, it stacks them on top of each other. And so it's best with these percentage-based data sets where it adds up to 100, so it shows up as a uniform height. But again, this is one example, and now that our code makes it easier to add these, we should be adding more, and we can also add more in the future. We've also added a feature where the chart title can change per unit of measurement. So previously, the chart title, which shows up above the chart in the table, was static. It was set in one place. But now you can set a different chart title for each unit of measurement. So as the user switches between units, the title will change. Okay, so moving on to some examples of the simplified design that we've got in version 1. So first off, this is an example of the headers. The top image you're seeing there is the previous version of OpenSDG, and then the bottom is OpenSDG version 1. So you can see that it's been cleaned up and also kind of expanded. So the background color is now uniform white, and the spacing has been expanded, so there's just more room around the various components. We've also moved the search bar up to the top right, which is sort of a industry standard. This is another example. This is the banners. These banners show up on like the indicator pages and also on goal pages. And so you can see, similarly, we've cleaned it up with a background color. It's now a white background color. We also found that having the goal title in there at the top was confusing for the users as to what the page was about. So we've removed the goal title, and we've separated the indicator number and the indicator title there. This also highlights one additional improvement: the goal, the breadcrumbs down below the home goal one. Those are links, and they're now underlined. And so across the site, links are now underlined, which gives the user more of an indication of that they can be clicked on. We've also redesigned the tabs on the site. These tabs show up by the metadata on indicator pages, and also around the data itself, the visualizations. So on the top left, you're seeing the old style, and the issues there were that it wasn't particularly clear which that they were tabs itself, and also which content was referring to which tab. So now on the bottom right, you see the new style, and it's the more traditional tab style, which makes it very clear that they are tabs and which one is active. And now moving on to the improved developer experience. And by developer here, I'm referring to the person in your organization who is responsible for maintaining the platform and setting it up. So first off, this is the first major release for OpenSDG, and that is important in itself. These numbers this is a common system called semantic versioning. The first of the three numbers refers to the major release, the second to the minor release, and the third to the hotfix release. There's a lot to go over there, but in a nutshell, major releases are when backwards compatibility could work. So those are here. First one. And then,
sorry to interrupt, Brock. Could I just ask if there's any guests who aren't on mute, if they could just please mute themselves. We're getting a bit of background interference with Brock's presentation. So if you could mute yourself, that would be great. Thank you. Sorry, Brock. Thank you.
No, thank you. Okay, so the minor release is more for like feature improvements or some bug fixes, and those are more common than the major releases. But the important thing with minor releases is that they will not have any breaking changes. So and the same goes for hotfix releases, which are more for like bug fixes or more urgent things. But neither minor releases or hotfix releases will have breaking changes. So once you get onto version 1, then you can upgrade to any future release that is within version 1 and not worry about any breaking changes. We've also made it easier to customize indicator pages. Indicator pages are sort of like the heart of the platform. And previously there was a very large layout that needed to be overridden if you wanted to customize. But now we've split that into very small components. And this makes it easier to understand what's going on. and also makes it easier to override specific parts of the page. For example, if you want to override just the content area of the indicator page, that's possible by overriding one small file. And because the files are small, that makes them easier to maintain. And similarly, we've also made it easier to customize the styles and colors on your platform. So the style sheets themselves have been split up into smaller components, which again makes the code simpler and easier to understand, makes it easier to find what you're looking for. And importantly, now all colors across the site are using variables called default variables, and this allows full control over the color scheme without having to write any code. All you have to do is override these variables, and it will propagate across the site. So it's just one file which controls the entire color scheme. So that's it for the items in version 1. And so a quick preview now of what's coming up next. We're already working on the next release, which will be a version 1.1.0. And the items there that we're working on include an SDMX download feature, multiple series within an indicator, a customizable homepage, and also bringing in the changes from the comprehensive indicator review. And it will include more as well. So with that, thank you for listening, and I'll turn it back over.
That's great. Thanks very much, Brock. So just a reminder again, please, if when people are presenting, if they could keep their microphones on mute and the videos off, that will just help the experience for other people. And also a reminder that you have the link to Slido. So if you want to ask any more questions in our Q&A sections, then please add in there, and also any ideas for future webinars. So next on the agenda, I'd like to introduce Lucy from the UK Office for National Statistics. And Lucy is going to talk a little about how for OpenSDG you can request new features. And so over to you, Lucy.
Thanks, Anne. I'll just share my screen.
Thank you.
Okay, there we go. Should be able to see the screen now. Okay, so like I introduced in the chat and Anne's just said, I'm Lucy Gwilym. I work at the Office for National Statistics in the UK, and I support the development of the UK SDG platform and of OpenSDG. And I also work with a number of countries who use OpenSDG as their reporting platform. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how OpenSDG users can request a new feature or raise an issue they may be having with their platform. So there's 3 different types of ways you can get support, either self-serving or from us, where we can interact a little bit. So either through using the OpenSDG documentation, using the issue log on the OpenSDG GitHub repository, or through the OpenSDG Google Groups forum. So first, I'm just going to talk about the OpenSDG documentation. This is available at open-sdg.org, as the link says on the slide. And in the documentation, there's quite a bit of information which can help you in different scenarios. So there's instructions which can be used to set up a platform. There's info on the different features that OpenSDG offers, as well as guidance on configuring some of the optional features. There's a list of frequently asked questions, and also some other information you might find helpful. There's also some case studies available as well within that documentation if you're interested in how other countries have implemented OpenSDG. So this might be like your first port of call if you need some more information on how to do something, or if you want to see if someone's already tried to do something and we may have added it in the frequently asked questions section. So once you've been to the documentation, another place that you could look for support or request something is the Open SDG issues log. So at this link here, there's an issue log which contains all of the open issues. So you can see what as people have already raised or requested. So before you raise a new issue, which you can also do from this page outlined in red, it might be worth looking through these and seeing if your issue or request already exists. So you can do this by either searching for a keyword in the search bar, or also you can filter by label. So for example, you could filter by a label called bug if you wanted to, if you've come across a bug and you want to see if someone's already reported it, or you could filter by the enhancement label if you have a new feature that you want to request. So on this page, if you click into the issues, you can view all of them, and you can see the comments without needing a GitHub account. But if you do want to comment or create a new issue, then you will need to create an account. So if you've checked through these and you've looked at the documentation and you still need support, then you may need to create a new issue. So like I said, you can do this by clicking this new issue button in red, and then you will be presented with 4 options. So you can either report a bug in the data build. So you can use this option if the data build is failing or something in your data is not looking right. You can report a bug in your site build. So you can use this option if your site build is failing, or if something doesn't look right on your platform, it's not how you expect it to look. And then you can request a feature. So you can use this option if you have an idea for a new feature for Open SDG, and then you can either leave a general comment or a question. So they're the 4 different types of issue templates that you can use to get support or request something. Next, on to the issue template example. So depending on which of those templates you choose on the previous slide, you'll be given some questions to answer about the issue. So this will just help us to identify what's causing the issue, or if it's a feature request, then this will allow us to see how the feature fits with our design principles, and we'll also use the responses to help us prioritize the issue. So whether it's something that needs to be done urgently, or if it's something that can be done in the longer term. And then finally, on to Google Groups. You can take a look at the Google Groups forum, which is the first link here. There you can see any open posts and replies, and you can also submit questions by going to the forum or through the email address which is available, so opensdg@googlegroups.com. Any answers that are submitted through the forum or through the email address appear at the forum, so it doesn't really matter which way you want to submit them. But if you do want to view other people's inputs as well, then it's worth going to the forum. The Google Groups forum isn't used as much as the issue log, but it is monitored. So if you wanted to go down that route, you could also expect a reply. So sorry, that's everything from me now. So hopefully this information will be helpful if you have any issues or want to request a new feature in the future. So if you have any questions about anything I've mentioned, then please post them in the Slido, and I'll pass back to Anne. Thank you.
Okay, lovely. Thanks, Lucy. So that brings us to the next part of the agenda, which is actually the first of our Q&A sessions. So I wonder, Lucy, if you could share the Slido page with the questions that we've got on there already for people to see. And just a reminder, I've added it in the chat as well, that people are welcome to ask any questions that they've got regarding Open SDG. So please add something in the chat or add something to Slido, or even if you prefer to pose your question, just add something in the chat to say you'd like to ask a question, and then we'll go through people for you to just raise it verbally. So So we'll just get Lucy to share the Slido screen a second. And then you'll be able to see the questions that we've got already.
There you go. You should be able to see the questions now.
Fantastic. Okay, so people are welcome to vote on ones that are there as well if we end up with multiple questions, but we'll just start at the top at the moment then. So I'd like to share OpenSDG with other Italian regions, but I'm afraid the files I changed are too local. Should local repos be forked from a master national one? Okay, so I wonder if Brock, maybe that might be a question that you could answer. What would be the best way for, I'm assuming this is a question from Lombardy, what would be the best way to share a sub-national platform with other similar regions, please?
Sure. So I think the first step would be to identify the parts of the platform that you would like that would be useful to the other regions. And I know the obvious one there is the translation itself. In this case, the Italian translation. So the first step is to get that translation available to all the other countries, and that could either be done by putting it in its own repository. I'm sorry, all the other regions. It could be done by putting it in its own repository, or by getting it into OpenSDG. Into SDG translations. That project, either one, and that would involve taking out any translations that are specific to your region, and maybe putting those in a separate repository. So having one repository for the region-specific translations, and then one repository for everything else. And then similarly, you can think in the same terms for anything else that you think would be shared, such as images or whatever. So that would be the first step I would recommend, is looking for what can be shared, and then for the case of the translations, putting them in separate repositories.
Okay, great, thanks, Brock. And just to add that then, following on from Lucy's presentation, if there are, with any of these questions, if there are follow-up questions, then please do raise them through the GitHub issues or the other ways that you can get in touch. So next question is, how will changes to the UN SDG indicator framework be managed in OpenSDG? So would that be another one for you, Brock, or Lucy? Who'd like to take that one? Brock, maybe?
Yeah, sure. So the main thing for implementing these changes is the translation. It's mainly a translation task. So the plan is to create a branch in the SDG translations project, and to start translating the different indicator names, any changes. And then once that's ready, to allow, so at that point, it can be optionally used by countries to switch over to this, the new indicators. And that's apart from the translation, there's not too much else that needs to be done, other than just changing your file names in your platform.
Okay, great. Thank you. So question number 3 on here then, I think probably one for you, Lucy, then, is could COVID-19 data also be reported on an OpenSDG platform?
Hi, so yeah, OpenSDG could be used for other initiatives beside the SDGs, and we have had interest from a couple of different organizations to do this. So there are 3 different ways that OpenSDG could be used to report another initiative, such as COVID-19. So firstly, an OpenSDG platform could be set up purely for reporting a different initiative, and could be easily customized to match this initiative. So the goal images could be changed to something else. The SDG logos could be changed to something else, but this might be a bit extreme. So another option would be to create an 18th goal. So data could be added for COVID-19 under maybe a goal 18, and data would need to be mapped to the indicator structure. So for example, you'd have to have an 18.1.1, but you could name them as you wanted, and as long as they're in that structure, then there's a possibility. And then the third way this could be done is that COVID-19 data or like indicators could be mapped to the SDG indicator framework. So similar to national indicators, and then these indicators could be added to existing goal or goals as they're mapped. So probably mostly goal 3 as this relates to health. But those are the 3 ways that an initiative such as COVID-19 could be reported with OpenSDG.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lucy. And I think we, Brock, you'll know this as well, that we have already had a proof of concept in the past. I think where we used what would be a goal 18 as an icon to report additional kind of data. So so there's a proof of concept out there. If anyone is interested in that, we could send a link or we could share to you. So it's definitely possible. Could you just scroll down the screen a little bit, Lucy, to show that bottom question, please, on the Slido?
Yep, is that visible for you now?
No, it's not to me, but what I'll do is I'll take another question off of, I can see the Slido directly. So I've got one which is around adding subnational indicators so that they're additional to the global indicator set. So how do you identify them? Do you do this using a 4-part indicator reference? So is that one for you, Brock, and then Lucy to add in, and then we might actually ask our UN Statistics Division's colleagues to comment on that and how that might work with the SDMX and the metadata concepts. So if you want to start, Brock.
Sure. Yes, so using the 4-part number, that's an approach that's already being used for reporting national and subnational indicators alongside the global indicators. For example, on the Kyrgyzstan platform, the national indicators are identified with 4-part indicator using the single 4th number, like 3.5.1.1, or where there are multiple national indicators related to a global indicator, then the number letter combination, like 1.3.1.1c or 1.3.1.1e. I open it up to the folks from UNSD if they have any feedback on this question.
Elena, would you like to add from our side?
Sure. Thanks, Viveka. Yes, that is also one of the conventions that we've seen used. There's no one-set approach that we're advocating for because we're cognizant of the fact that countries have been already numbering their indicators, their national indicators. So we've suggested in some cases using like a geocode, like a 2-letter code for the country, following the 3-part indicator, and then indicating with a number if there's more than one national indicator that's associated with that indicator, having the 2-letter country code and then followed by a number. But as I said, it depends on the country really. So anything that just distinguishes the national set from the global set works fine, as long as it's clear. I hope that answers.
Great, thanks, Elena. I see, Abdullah, you've got a hand raised that's shown in the participants. Did you want to add something there, or was it a further question you had?
Yeah, thanks very much, Anne. This is Abdullah from UNSD. Just to add to Elena's answer, we have indicators and we have series. Indicators as part of the framework, and then explain how to assign numbers to the indicators. But at the data level, we're dealing with series because the same indicator, a single indicator can include multiple series. And if you want to add national indicators to the data structure, to the global data structure definition, we have a set of guidelines that explains how to do just that. how to take the global data structure definition and add series for national indicators, and these guidelines are available at the UNSD website, specifically at the site of the SDMX SDGs working group. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Abdullah. Did Lucy or Nazira, did you want to add anything on that? Because along those lines, given the experience of Kyrgyzstan doing that?
I haven't got anything further to add, but so I'll pass on to Nazira.
Nazira, anything you wanted to add to that with your experience of doing that?
I will tell in my presentation because next.
Okay. Right. Okay. Fair enough. We won't spoil it then. Right. I can't see any more questions in the. Oh, there's one actually from you, Nazira. So if we cover that question now, then if you want to, before we lead into your presentation. So Nazira is asking, is there a plan to implement GIS systems to the OpenSDG platform, or is it already possible? So Brock, is that anything you could comment on?
Sure. So by implement a GIS system, I can tell you what is already possible, and that's showing a map. If we have a special column that we look for in the data called geocode, and with some extra configuration, you've got to provide boundary data like a GeoJSON file for your regions. But along with, with that boundary data and with the geocode column, it is possible to display the data on a map and to go forwards and backwards through the years with a little slider that shows at the bottom. So that's what's currently available, but we're open to new, any future requests related to that. One thing one limitation is that the map can't display disaggregation at the moment. It only displays the aggregate values. But that's a feature request that we've had and that we're working on implementing.
Thanks, Brock. And just to add as well, if anyone is interested in the maps and things or any other features, if you go to the documentation area, the www.open-sdg.org, there is a page on there towards the top on the left linked, which is about the features and where we've got examples from the various different countries on how certain things are done. Then we've got examples in there to maps and things like that. So please do check out that page, and it will give you a good visual idea of some of the things that are available. And there's also a frequently asked question section on that documentation, and we will take, so the questions that have been asked here today, we will take them and build answers and put them up into that area as well. Okay, so I don't see any more questions in the chat or in the Slido at the moment that we can come back to when we get our next session. So we won't have all the joy in one big chunk. We've got a 15-minute session later on as well in the webinar. So that brings me now then to introduce Nazira from Kyrgyzstan, who's going to present and tell us a little about her experiences with OpenSDG. So over to you, Nazira. Thank you. Are you just sharing your screen, yeah? Are you on mute, Nazira? All right.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, can hear you now. Thank you.
And can you see my slides?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much. Over to you, Nazira. Thank you.
Great. Hi, everyone. Kyrgyzstan experience in using OpenSDG platform as a national reporting platform. So first, I would like to note that National Statistical Committee of the Kyrgyz Republic is play a key role in building reporting and monitoring systems in the Kyrgyz Republic. And we have centralized system where data with Metadata collecting by National Statistical Committee, and so National Statistical Committee is coordinate all the process related to SDG indicators. So as National Statistical Office was responsible for building national and reporting system for Kyrgyz Republic, we had two options how to build reporting system. So first option was to build our own system, and the second option was to use existing solutions. So after analyzing a lot of platforms and different ways, we came to ideas that we would like to use OpenSDG platform. So for it, we had a few reasons. So first, OpenSDG has a few advantages. First, it allows us to disseminate data and metadata. Moreover, it has very good visualization function. So for our indicator, we can have as graphs. Also, we can have maps. Moreover, all data can be downloaded in different formats as metadata. So for nowadays, it can be downloaded in CSV format, but we're also working to download in Excel format for our users, and also it supports a few languages. For example, in our platform, we have today two languages, it's Russian and English, but we are working on our national language, is Kyrgyz. So we hope in future we will have also. And I also would like to emphasize two things. It's that OpenSDG platform is flexible. Why? Because from beginning, as we started to use this platform, we have managed, thanks to ONS team, of course, we have managed to do a lot of changes. For example, as was mentioned today, we have added our national indicators. So not only global set are disseminated in our platform, but also national one. Moreover, if you will go into our platform, you will see the different structure of metadata, which is different from UK platform, for example. Thanks to ONS, we have our metadata structure according to UN system. So it allows us to use one structure of metadata for whole system. It's not only for SDG indicators, but in the future we are planning to have metadata for another indicators as well. Also, I would like to say that our OpenSDG platform is really too easy and simple to use. So what does it mean? For example, as we started, we didn't have like all the time some support from IT experts. Usually we had who were working on it. Of course, when we were talking about big changes and solving a big or big mistakes, we got support from ONS team. But in general, we were uploading our data and metadata. We tried to do it by ourselves, and after some workshops. So also we managed to learn how to make some small changes, and in general, by ourselves, without IT experts, we can all the time support and make it sustainable our platform. So what we have for nowadays. Nowadays, we have already OpenSDG platform in our country. It has new part. It was already presented. We have the same, but just one issue. For example, for reporting status, we have not only 3 status, we have 4. For example, it's already published one. Also, which is not on the process, and also we have some indicators which is called not applicable. For example, for our countries, around 26 SDG global indicator is not applicable. So we give them the status is not applicable. Also, there is some indicators which is with the status of on the process. We put such kind of status for our indicators related to our roadmap on monitoring SDGs. So for 5 years, we have some plans to have new indicators. So additional one, we have a news page. I think it's also different from another platform. News page is we updated new things, new information related to SDG in our country, mostly about events, different activities related to SDG. So in general, analysis is almost the same. So about the structure, how our indicators is disseminated. As you already saw, we have goals, targets, indicators, and indicators we have as a national and global one, and each indicator has a label, national or global, so you can easily see and understand which one is what. And also for each indicator, we have data, metadata, and graphs. Data, it's in a table format. Metadata also like people you can see and you can have a look in our website. And graphs. In the future, of course, we want to have map for all our indicators, but it's our plan. So how was the process of implementation of an SDG platform in our country? Here, I would like to say that almost exactly 1 year how we started. So we started last year in the beginning of July. So when we decided to implement OpenSDG. So first process, it was collection of data and metadata in requested format. And then, of course, we are transforming to SDMX format and such kind of things. Then we had our first workshop with our colleagues on the team. They help us to increase our capacity in using OpenSDG platform, and also for that moment we managed to upload some global SDG indicators and metadata for them. After around more than half year, we have more individual work in our country, but we all the time have distant support from ONES team. All the time we were on a connection. Even we have a time difference, but we didn't have any problem with that. Also, after half year, we had a second workshop where we already managed to upload national SDG indicators and metadata. Of course, between all of this process, we had a mission of UNSD experts who help us to prepare our data in SDMX format, Abdullah. And then when our files were prepared in national, our national indicators were prepared, with our own team, we managed to upload them. Also, within this workshop or this mission, we create news page and also work on our mistakes. And nowadays, we are still work on our platform, but as I said, we all the time have the support from our colleague on this team. And so, what kind of resources we use? First, of course, it was remote support and workshops. From the first day, we all the time in a touch and try to have different. We try to have a workshop, but due to the situation now, we have all the time calls and chats. So I have a small team who is helping me to implement OpenSDG platform and SDMX format as well. And the simple things is computer and internet. It's very important, of course, anyway. So, so what we have for nowadays? We have our nice OpenSDG platform where we disseminate for nowadays 102 global SDG indicators and 57 national indicators, and all of them are in SDMX format. Also, as you can see, it's just as an example, we have tables and graphs, and there is also a link to our platform, so you can have a look later on. And what kind of problems we have and what we learned. So there is no expert in Kyrgyzstan in GitHub, but it's not a problem. We have regular capacity building, and it was not only one after our workshop and we stopped. No, after our workshop, we all the time train, increase our capacity, ask questions, and try to work by ourselves to see what we can do. As OpenSDG have very good function because it's one page is when you can show for your users, and another page is for your work. So we can you can do different things and then see in your working page, and then just push to the left and see and disseminate to your users. So it's also very important. As a next steps, we are going to have a data bank as a backend for OpenSDG platform. So we are on the process to select. And also, there is a plan to interlink with other platforms. For example, with our mobile app, which is called Statistical. Or also, I had a question today to try to integrate with the GIS system, but as already is possible, we will try to work on it as well. So I'm done. If you have any question, I will be happy to answer. Thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Nazira. So we've got a couple of minutes if anyone does have any specific questions for Nazira. If you want to indicate in the chat if you want to ask something, or otherwise we have one more presentation and then we will have another Q&A session. So if you'd like to stop sharing your screen, thank you, Nazira. So I'd like to introduce now and hand over to Elena from the UN Statistics Division, and she's going to tell us a little about the UN metadata template and the SDMX MSD. Over to you, Elena. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anne. And thank you everyone for joining. Are you able to see my screen? The presentation?
Yes, thank you. Yep, great, thank you.
Okay, great. So my name is Elena de Jesus. I work at the UN Statistics Division on the DFID-funded project and SDG monitoring that some of you may be aware of. And we've been partnering with ONS and CODE to assist some of our project countries in setting up OpenSDG as the dissemination and reporting platform for SDG data. And we've also supported other aspects of SDG monitoring in our countries, including building capacity around metadata and SDMX. So my presentation on the UNSD metadata template today is quite brief due to time constraints. We used to spend 3 days in-person trainings just on metadata in our countries, but I hope it will give you at least a sense of the work that we're doing and how your country can utilize it to improve the usability of your SDG data. So first off, why do we need a metadata template? Why do we need to standardize our metadata? Well, as with all standards, we're looking to improve usability and comparability. We want to make it easier for our users to read our metadata. And the standard format allows them to quickly scan it to find particular information they want. And also computer systems can easily scan standardized metadata and process it for electronic sharing, display, and comparison. And a template helps us standardize our metadata. And so luckily, we already have a framework for data and metadata exchange, which includes some of the standardization components that help us do that. So SDMX, which stands for Statistical Data and Metadata Exchange. Some of you might be familiar with this already, so I'm not going to get into it too much. You can click on the link in the slide and learn more details about it. But basically, One of the goals of SDMX is to reduce the reporting burden so that we have data reporting, data dissemination, and data sharing are done in one single step. The data set is reported once and shared widely with modern technologies. So the same is done for metadata. And so when we standardize metadata according to the SDMX standard, we use a structure defined by the metadata structure definition, or MSD. So this is like the data structure definition that was mentioned previously for data. And this is the structure definition for metadata. And this allows us to exchange metadata the same way that we would exchange data via SDMX. And we can store and exchange the metadata separately or together with the data. And we can also index and search it. So it's very flexible. So the MSD for the SDG metadata was developed by the IAEG SDG's SDMX working group. And the group also recently approved a template for drafting metadata that conforms to the MSD. So the first link on the slide is this Word document, which is the template for metadata that's approved by the working group. But before I jump into the metadata template, I just wanted to highlight here the importance of national SDG metadata as different from the global metadata that we all know that's in the global SDG metadata repository. So the global metadata focuses primarily on international custodian agencies that compile and report data. And the national metadata produced by countries actually allows us to understand what's going on at the national level. So it's very important for countries to compile specific metadata that details their data collection methodology, their sources, their specific limitations, quality considerations, etc. And this will allow at the global level also to explain sometimes the discrepancies that can occur between the data that international agencies report for a country and the data the countries themselves report. So sometimes people think that since there's already global metadata, we can just attach it to our national data sets because it describes kind of the indicator, etc. But that's not the case, because we really need to understand what are the specificities of each country context. So we need the specific national metadata. So that being said, the metadata template that was approved by the working group, that's that first link, it applies both to international agencies and to countries. They can both use it to share their SDG metadata. But because UNSD works directly with countries, and specifically on this DFID project, we build national capacity, and we're very kind of in tune with making things kind of more relevant for the country context. We developed kind of I guess an offshoot or a metadata template that is, the structure is basically the same as the global one, but we've added some instructions and kind of disabled some of the fields that are not applicable for country reporting. So now we have this metadata template for national reporting, which just is just more geared towards countries, but it's at the root of it, it's the same template. And so the template contains two main parts, which is the metadata attachment and the metadata concept. So I'll go over those now. So the metadata attachment refers to the way that the metadata is associated with the data set it describes, so kind of linking it to the data set. And in SDMX for the SDGs, we attach the metadata via 3 parameters. We have a reporting type, global, regional, or national, the SDG series. And this is an important note to make here, because sometimes people think that the metadata attaches to the indicator. But in fact, in the SDG indicator framework, we have several indicators that have different series, underlying series. And so it's very important to attach the metadata to the series and not the indicator, because sometimes the metadata might be distinct for each series. And we also have the reference area, so whether it's for a country or a region. And also we can specify in the template which language the metadata is in. So I'm using here, and thank you once again to Kyrgyzstan for all of their work in setting up the OpenSDG platform and populating it. And I've taken some of the metadata that's on there and translated into English. as an example, because I think it's easier to see when it's concrete information filled into the template. And of course, these are just the slides, and you can look at the link in the presentation for the Word document of the actual template itself. So here we have the attachment section of the template, and we have, as you can see, the reporting type has been selected as national. The SDG series I've chosen just randomly 3.2.1 under 5 mortality rate. The reference area here is Kyrgyzstan, and we've chosen the language as English. So that was the attachment section. And now moving to the concepts. So in the metadata structure definition, the concepts describe all of the relevant characteristics of the metadata. And we have 7 concepts. These are the main 7 concepts, and each one of them, as you'll see, is further broken down into detailed concepts. And in the template itself, in the document, there's an appendix. That's the definition of metadata concepts, and you can read about each of the detailed concepts to find out more information for what's needed there. So our first concept is indicator information, and here you can see the example information filled in from Kyrgyzstan. I'm not going to read it out because of time constraints, but you can see that the main concept includes detailed concepts such as the goal, target, indicator, series. Very importantly, the metadata update field, which is when your metadata was last updated so that people are aware of how current it is, and other detailed concepts. Next, we have the data reporter, which is the organization responsible for reporting the indicator. And this includes also detailed contact information for the focal point, so that if users have any questions or feedback, they can reach out to someone. And it's important, of course, to keep this information current and updated. Next, we have definition, concepts, and classifications. And this is where the country would define concepts that, for example, might be understood slightly differently in the country, or there's specificities to the national context. It's very important to highlight them here, and any classifications used. And then we have data source type and data collection method. Also very important main concept with a number of underlying detailed concepts. So data sources can be broken out into its own field, and then data collection method, the release calendar, the collection calendar, and various other information. We also have other methodological considerations, which includes a number of detailed concepts, such as the rationale for why this indicator exists, any limitations or comments, method of computation. Continuing the same main concept, we have validation as well. And here you see on your screen 3 of the underlying detailed concepts have been grayed out for adjustments, treatment of missing values, and regional aggregations. So this is the example I was talking about of kind of customizing this for national reporting, because these 3 detailed concepts only apply at the international organization level, so they're not applicable to the national context. So they're grayed out here, so you don't have to worry about them for national reporting. And then we have data availability and disaggregation, which is a main concept that doesn't have detailed concepts, but is very important. And also comparability, deviation from international standards. And finally, references and documentation. So these are the 7. And I do apologize for kind of rushing through this due to time constraints. But you can reference back the template and the instructions that are contained therein. And just to leave you with some recommendations for drafting and compiling metadata that you can see here, basically kind of knowing your audience and making sure that the metadata is concise, and, but also comprehensive, not overwhelming, using descriptions that are easy to understand, preserving any historical changes, and of course documenting workflows, and ensuring that you have contact details for any focal points. So that's all I have for now, and back to you, Anne.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Elena. So that's really interesting. and like you said, all the slides basically are going to be shared afterwards, so you'll have them as reference material. So we're back to another chunk on our Q&A sessions. So if you'd like to stop sharing your screen, Elena, rather than share a screen now, I think what I'll do is I'll just read out the questions, and then we can put video on for anybody who's actually going to be able to answer the question. So we've got some more questions come in now. Thank you. Everyone's gotten over their shyness, I think, and started asking. So I'll go with the ones with the most votes at the top. So let's have a look. The top one is, oh, brilliant. Excellent. Diane from Uniscap, thank you. I promise we didn't pay to say this, but it says OpenSDG is awesome and easy to adopt. What is preventing more countries from using it? That's a good question. Great question. I don't know. Do you have any ideas on that yourself? You're still sharing your video, Elena, just to let you know. So no problem. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So yeah, the question is, what is preventing more countries from using it? I don't know if anyone, I'm wondering if we almost turn that round as like to why are countries using it? Would that help us understand why some countries aren't? I don't know. Anyone in the UNSD team who've worked with other countries, some who've picked other solutions or aware of why countries are picking OpenSDG? Do you have any thoughts on what could be done to encourage more people to use it? Abdullah, Rebecca?
I see Daniel has raised his hand here.
All right, great. Go ahead.
Hi, and hi everybody. Just to come back to the question there, it's not as much of how easy it is. It's related to the skills, the legacy systems which are in the NSO. So the more explained it is in terms of the technical implementation, the better the adoption. So I put one idea in the in the Slido, so that could be something that could spur up specific to how to implement this from scratch and showing the tricks. And I know we have already documentation that people go through, but that doesn't really translate into adoption. So we need to push on showcasing how easy it is to set up. Maybe bits and pieces of videos and tricks on using GitHub and things like that could be much helpful than having it there on GitHub. I mean, it needs an effort from advocating for it.
Okay, thank you. That's some really helpful ideas and some suggestions. I also see Anna Hitt, one of our OpenSDG ambassadors, has got your hand up. So over to you. If you're welcome to put your video on when you're talking as well, Anna Hitt, if you'd like to. I think you're still on mute, Anna Hitt. Did you want to speak now, Anna Hitt, or shall I move on to another question? You're still showing as being on mute, even though you've got your hand raised. I think what we'll do, we'll come back to you then and see if you wanted to add anything else. Okay, so some further questions on the list. So I'm taking the ones that have got more votes. So actually there's one here that's relevant to Daniel's comments then, which is how long does it take to set up OpenSDG from scratch and what skills are needed? I think we could give quite a short answer on that, but then we can refer to where there is some documentation available. So Brock and Lucy, I don't know whether you would like to take this question.
Sure. So
feel free to share your video, Brock. That's it. Great.
Setting it up from scratch is a fairly quick process. You know, it really doesn't take more than a few hours at the most. It could be as little as less than an hour. if you're more experienced with it. But that gives you a starting place. So that's the technical process of setting it up and just getting it up there so that you can look at it in a browser. And then there's of course much more that needs to be done in terms of preparation of data and metadata and all the various decisions that need to be made, and that's a separate thing. But yeah, so just setting it up itself doesn't take too long. It just less than a day at the most. And the skills that are needed, we try to make our quick start as easy to use as possible. In the past, there have been things necessary related to like SSH keys and things like that, but I believe we've now kind of cut out all of the really complicated stuff. And so it's just, you have to have sort of a comfort level with using GitHub and just kind of making your way around, editing some files. So as far as setting it up, there's not really any technical requirement other than just sort of a comfort level with that kind of like the GitHub interface. Then once you want to move on and start customizing it and making it, improving it and changing things, then that requires more of a technical expertise and basic web development. So knowing how to work with HTML and CSS, and the particular technologies that we use are Jekyll and from the data side, a little bit of Python. But anyway, hopefully that answers the question.
Great. Thanks, Brock. Yeah, it does. And just to say as well, I know to add to that question, there's various different models, and some people have with technical skills have set it all up with no support. There's been a light touch support from the Open SDG team, or with other countries we put more effort in and had more meetings with. So there's various models available, and as Lucy mentioned, if people are setting up their own copy, then support is available through GitHub or getting in touch via email. And I think some really good points that you made, Daniel, about how we perhaps could provide some more material to assist people in setting things up. So that is definitely something we'll consider. Thank you. Right. Sorry, there's a lot of interference here. I'm not sure. Anna hit. I think we're getting a lot of interference from your line. I'm not sure if it's coming through. Sorry, could you mute? Anna, could you stay on mute a sec, please, and perhaps use the chat function to raise your question? There's a lot of strong interference coming through. So. Yeah, if you could stay on mute, Anna, that would be grand for now. Thank you. And just add your question in the chat. That would be great. Thank you. Right, so coming to some more questions that we've had asked. So actually from Daniel, is the Open SDG currently allowing the use of multiple series for an indicator? So I think that's one that Lucy maybe or Brock could take, because that is something we've been looking at and working on.
Yeah, I can take that. So that, like Anne said, that is something we've been working on, is currently in the pipeline and it's being tested. We had some feedback from Kyrgyzstan a couple of months back that they needed it to work with their SDMX files, as within the SDMX structure, they are those sub-series. Not sub-series, like the sub-indicator, so the series. So that is something that we have taken on board and began developing in Open SDG. We still have some testing to do before we put it into a release, but it's definitely something that is coming.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lucy.
Thanks.
We're getting feedback from you again, Anna Hit. So I wonder if you could just stay on mute, please. and then, or if you're able to access the chat, or if you're on email with anyone else, if you've got a question you wanted to raise or a comment. So, right, one more question that's been raised is, does OpenSDG work with SDMX? Well, Elena in her presentation mentioned some of the SDMX stuff, but I wonder, Lucy, if you wanted to just give a very quick overview of what we've got with SDMX at the moment, and particularly with your experience with Kyrgyzstan.
Yes, no problem. So as Nazira mentioned in her presentation, they're already using SDMX to upload their files to their OpenSDG platform. So currently for SDMX, you can either upload the files to the platform like Kyrgyzstan have done, or there's another option where you can point at a SDMX API endpoint. And we have a proof of concept set up for that as well. So we're currently working on some guidance for the best way to switch from a CSV workflow to an SDMX workflow. So how you would go from uploading CSV files to your OpenSDG platform to uploading SDMX files instead, if you are making that switch over to the to SDMX. So in that documentation, we're going to include some recommendations on what technical expertise are required and what training might be useful to complete. And we're also currently working on the functionality for SDMX files to be posted on an OpenSDG platform so that they can be downloaded. I'm not sure if Nazira has anything to add from her experience, but that's it from me.
Okay, that's great. I think that's plenty, Lucy. Thank you very much for that. So, and we've got a few more questions coming in. One from Manuel: is OpenSDG always going to be open? Yes, is the short answer. I don't know whether Brock, you might want to comment, but one of our design principles is actually about being open source. So, so yes, it will stay open. Further questions in the list. One from Maro. I manually edited metadata, but I think there is some sort of automated procedure. So I wonder if, Lucy, if you could just briefly mention about how we automate the metadata side in the UK and what the options are. And if everyone else could just stay on mute, please, that would be great. Thank you.
Hi. So yeah, there's a couple of options when it comes to the metadata. So first of all, there's a couple of options for uploading, for the format you upload in. So you can either upload in Markdown or Excel or CSV, but there is some more information in the documentation on how to use the different formats. But then with the Markdown, you also have the option of using Prose, which is sort of an online editor, which is slightly easier than editing the Markdown files directly. But then here in the UK, we use a different model where we have our metadata stored in an Excel file, and then we've automated that being converted into a Markdown file before it goes on to the platform, which again is a slightly more user-friendly way than editing the Markdown file directly. But like I said, there is some more information on each of the different methods within the documentation online.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lucy. One final question I think we have time for here, and I think, as I mentioned earlier, if there are any more questions that come through and we don't cover everything, we will be sending out answers to all questions after the webinar. So final one for you, Brock, I think briefly from Daniel, and is, could you please tell us the steps involved for upgrading to the latest version for those countries who have already implemented OpenSDG? So just got about 3-4 minutes max probably for you to talk that through, please.
Sure. There is documentation available for this, so I'm going to just refer to it real quick. All right, so hold on 1 second, sorry. Okay. Just from a high level, because there are some details, but one thing that would need to be done are some translation updates. If you are using a forked version of SDG translations, then you would need to add some additional translations to it. If you're using SDG translations directly, then you're good to go. So all the additional translations are in there, and these are things that relate to the new functionality we added. For example, we added the download button on the front page, and so we needed to translate the text that's associated with that. A couple of, okay, so in terms of the data repository, so your data, you would need to upgrade to SDG build version 1. So SDG build is a separate project, but it's sort of a dependency of OpenSDG. It's a Python project, and it also has a version 1 release, and so you need to upgrade to that. And there are some sort of optional things you can do that are possible with SDG build version 1. One of which is to manage your configuration in a configuration file, rather than having to write Python code. You can manage it in a configuration file. That's optional though. There are a few special metadata fields that, if you're already using them, they would need to be changed slightly. And there's just a couple actually. It's or actually just one. Just the data start values field. If you're using that in some of your indicators, the structure of it has changed slightly. After you've done this, you can confirm that your data passes validation, and that's something you can run locally, or you can upload it and have it done automatically in GitHub. We've also adopted a model where the translations now need to live in the data repository rather than the site repository. So, but they can be moved over as is. So just copy and paste all the translation files from, if you have any in the site repository, transfer them over to the data repository. As far as the site repository goes, obviously you upgrade to version 1 in the configuration. There's also a gem, a Jekyll OpenSDG plugins gem, which also has a version 1. This is another dependency, and that needs to be upgraded to version 1. As a bonus, you can actually simplify your site repository by deleting all the indicator and goal files that they're automatically created now, so they can be deleted. And there's documentation on the steps there. And there's a few more updates to the configuration file that can be made, but I won't go into those details. That's all into the documentation.
Okay, great. Thanks, Brock.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go on. I was going to say, because I think that brings me nicely. I've just had a sneaky peek at the some of the things that are going to be raised in the next section, which is ideas for future webinars. So that's quite nice. So thanks, Brock. So I wonder if Lucy, if you we could hand over to you, and if you'd like to share your screen, because you are going to have a few minutes on talking through some of the suggestions that we've got regarding webinars, future webinars. And thank you everyone for your suggestions so far. So
thanks, Anne. And yes, thank you for everyone who's submitted an idea for a future webinar. Like Anne said at the beginning, this is our first one, but hopefully we will do another or more. So here on my screen now, hopefully you can see the ideas that people have submitted. So we'll quickly run through these, and then we'll take the ideas forward, and they can help us inform what we will what we'll cover if we do another webinar. So if you do like one of the ideas that someone has submitted, don't forget to vote it up. So this first idea has 6 votes, so definitely very popular. So Daniel suggested that it'd be great if there's a webinar showing a new Open SDG platform being set up from scratch, so that people can get an idea of how involved it is. And like I said, that's quite popular, so maybe something we would include. We have a duplicate here about if the Open SDG team could introduce other possible backends. So I think that's around connecting the front end to a different back end. So it depends on the sort of model around this, but I think for this sort of request, maybe this could be something that would be added to the Open SDG issue log, and then maybe we could have a further discussion. So yourself, the developers, and anyone else who might be interested in that feature being added. Manuel suggested showing several visualization examples and how to add data to do them. And we've got another one about upgrading to new versions. So we know Brock's just gone through that, but again, if there's more interest in that, then that's something that we could maybe add to a future webinar. If anyone has anything else to add, we can leave this open for a while once the webinar finishes, and we can feedback when we send out the other information, such as what Ant's going to go into now. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Lucy. So I wonder if you could just share our last slide then, please. So we just really wanted to finish by saying a huge thank you to everyone who's taken part today and who's joined. As Lucy said, it is our first webinar, so we really are looking for your feedback and input on today, and which bits you found best and which bits you would really like us to repeat or to do differently next time. So we will be sending out a feedback form because, as I say, we really value what you think about what did today. We will also send out links to the presentations, to the Q&A and to the recordings. We will use your input. Thank you very much for planning for the webinars, but it seems clear that one area that's really popular is how to set one up from scratch, and also ideas on how to upgrade. One other thing that we'd really like to explore with you is what is the best way to communicate about Open SDG and to share information with you. So we have email addresses from today that we would like to produce a contact list if people think that would be useful for us to send information out. We've been exploring whether we do social media, really just trying to understand what is the best way to send information to you. So I would like to say one more huge thank you on behalf of the Open SDG team for you all joining here today. Thank you to all our presenters, to UNSD for joining with us, and really just look forward to having the next webinar with you, and thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, stay safe.
Thanks very much, Anne. Thanks very much, Anne.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.